So hey guys, welcome to this new video of antitubercular drugs part 2. So the table which I had spoken about, the summary of the first line drugs, so here it is. So to make this table we should make sorry 6 columns, where the first column stands for the drug name, then the mechanism of action, then the ultimate action of the drug, then if it is a static or it is a bactericidal drug, then it acts intracellularly or extracellularly, and lastly the main side effect. This will cover the major chunk of first line drugs, like information, like a fingertip information of each drug. Okay, so HRZE. H stands for isoniazide, R for rifampin, Z for pyrazinamide, and E for ethambutol. So now for isoniazide, the mechanism of action was it binds to NAD. Okay, NAD binder, and it will inhibit INHA and Cas-A. Okay, and the ultimate action was it will inhibit mycolic acid and therefore the cell wall synthesis. Okay, and it is a bactericidal drug, means it will kill the bacteria. Okay, now whether it was an intracellular or an extracellular drug, yes, it is both. Okay, and for the side effect, remember one H. Okay, it is hepatotoxic, the main side effect. So this was about the isoniazide. Coming to rifampin, the mechanism of action, it inhibits DNA dependent RNA polymerase. Okay, so the ultimate action was negative RNA synthesis, and it was a bacteriostatic drug, and it was a both, like the intracellular and extracellular drug. Again one H for the main side effect, and it is hepatitis. Okay, coming to pyrazinamide, what was the mechanism of action? It inhibited that fatty acid synthase complex. Okay, fatty acid synthase complex. So if the fatty acid synthase complex was inhibited, the ultimate action was negative cell wall synthesis. Okay, it was a bacteriostatic drug, and it act on intracellular conditions. Okay, and main side effect was another H, which is hyperuricemia, which causes gout. Okay, coming to the last drug, ethambutol, it also act on the fatty acid synthesis, but it inhibited that arabinosyl transferase enzyme. Okay, so the ultimate action was negative cell wall synthesis, and it was a bacteriostatic drug. Okay, and it act on both intracellularly and extracellularly, and the side effect, the unique side effect we knew was of ethambutol, it caused color vision defect. And mainly red green vision. Okay, so this is the summary table for the first line drug, which will cover all the vital information of the first line drugs. So starting with HRZE, the mechanism of action of each drug, the ultimate action, the static or cidal status, and the intracellular or extracellular acting, and the main side effect. So we can observe one pattern, that the ultimate action in that ultimate action, only rifampin is a drug which is inhibiting the RNA synthesis, but the ultimate action of other drugs is it inhibits the cell wall synthesis. And in also the static or Siddle status, only the isoniazid is a drug which is bactericidal, rest of all are bacteriostatic. And the intra or extracellular status, only pyrazinamide is intracellularly acting, rest all are acting on both aspects. And the main side effect, the first three starts with H and last is color vision defect. So this is the summary table. Now heading towards the second line drug. To remember the second line drug, we should remember one thing, the classification of second line drug. Okay, so the classification is according to the grouping, okay, which is designed for the MDR TB regimen. So we should remember group A, group B and group C. So in this video we will be mainly talking about the treatment of TB according to the regimens, the MDR regimens, the guidelines, okay, so the NTP guidelines. So we will be not going into that much depth of each and every drug. So to remember the group A, group B, group C drug, we have a mnemonic. So LMB for group A. LMB is left mouse button. Okay, so we gamers generally know this. So L stands for levofloxacin, M stands for moxifloxacin, B stands for bedaquiline, and L stands for linezolid. So left mouse button, left, the mnemonic. For group B, we have a mnemonic CCT, continuous class test. So C stands for clofazimine, another C for cycloserine, and T stands for terazidium. For group C, we do not have such a mnemonic, but to remember the main drugs, so the ethambutol, it is one of the main drug which comes under group C. Then we have streptomycin. We also have pyrazinamide. Okay. Then we have ethionamide. Then we have one drug, a very long name, p-amino salicylic acid. Okay, so these are some of the main drug which comes in group C drug regimen. Okay, now by this information we will be now going to the treatment of TB. Okay, so now going to the heading of TB and resistance. So in TB and resistance, we have monoresistance TB, monoresistant TB. So monoresistance TB means, it is simple, by the name we can tell that it is resistant to one first line drug. Okay, then we have polydrug resistant TB. Poly means multiple drugs. So the condition for polydrug resistance is the TB bacteria is resistant to more than one first line drug except isoniazid and rifampin. Okay, for polydrug resistance TB, and in short form we write it as PDR TB. Okay, then we have multi-drug resistant, the one concept which is familiar with you. So multi-drug resistant, so the condition for multi-drug resistance, it is resistant to more than one first line drug, okay, including isoniazid and rifampin. Okay, so resistance to more than one first line drug including isoniazid and rifampin with or without other drugs. Okay, so the compulsory drugs to be included in resistant is isoniazid and rifampin, and it can include other drugs or it cannot include other drug resistance. So in short form we write it as MDR-TB, which you are familiar with. Okay, so this was the main difference between polydrug and multi-drug resistance. Now we have one more concept. It says extensively resistant TB. Okay, so it is a TB which is resistant additionally to a fluoroquinolone, okay, and at least one additional group A drug. Group A drug where? Left mouse button left. Okay, linezolid, levofloxacin, moxifloxacin and bedaquiline. So extensively resistant TB says that it is resistant additionally to fluoroquinolone or the group A drug and at least one additional group A drug, and we write it as XDR-TB. So revising the TB and resistance, monoresistance TB stands for that the resistance to one first line drug. Polydrug resistance TB, it says resistant to more than one first line drug excluding isoniazid and rifampin. Then we have multi-drug resistant TB, which says that resistance to more than one first line drug including isoniazid and rifampin, and we can include or we can exclude the resistance of other drugs. And in extensively resistant TB, the TB is additionally resistant to a fluoroquinolone and at least one additional drug of group A. So this was TB and resistance. So now we will now see the treatment. So for monoresistance TB, treatment of mono-resistant TB. So okay, we will like shift this a bit here. A small concept is remaining: the initiation phase and the continuation phase. Okay, this is the concept which is remaining. Okay, sorry, this is initiative. So initiative phase is the phase which is for 2 months in a patient which is like first time suffering from TB, and continuation phase is of 4 months for a patient who is suffering from TB for the first time. So in this 2 months, in this initiation phase, it is used to rapidly kill multiplying bacteria, and this 4 months of continuation phase is used to prevent relapse. Okay, So this was a small concept of initiative and continuation phase which we should know, because we will give the drugs accordingly. Okay, so starting with the treatment. Now just a second. First we will see the treatment of first time exposure. Okay, so it says 6 HRZE plus 4 HRE. So this is the treatment of first time exposure. Now before starting with this treatment of monoresistance TB, one very small thing to notice to do our work at an easier pace. So yeah, now we should write the short form of these drugs, okay, for our better understanding and to save our time to write the regimen. So we will write the short form of these drugs. Okay, so levofloxacin is written as LFX, okay, capital L and small fx. Moxafaxacin MFX. Okay, then bedaquiline is written as BDQ and linezolid as LZD. Clofazimine is written as CFZ, cycloserine as CS, and tericidone as TRD. Ethambutol is written as capital E, streptomycin as S with brackets, pyrazinamide is written as Z, ethionamide is written as ETO, and P-aminosalicylic acid as PAS, P capital, A capital, S capital. Okay, now we are ready to start the treatments. Okay, treatment of mono-resistant TB. Tell me one thing, what was mono-resistant TB? Mono-resistant TB was a TB in which there is resistance to only one first line drug. Okay, now if there is resistance to one first line drug, the regimen, okay, it is the regimen says the regimen is L, just a second, LFX was levofloxacin REZ. The regimen is this, and there is no differentiation in the continuation and initiation phase. Okay, this regimen is for 6 or 9 months straight, no initiation continuation phase. Okay, so this was about the treatment of mono-resistant TB. Now if there is a multi-drug resistance TB, okay, or a polydrug resistant TB, so writing is treatment of polydrug resistance TB, okay, PDR TB. So for polydrug resistant TB, the regimen is the same, 6 or 9 months, levofloxacin REZ. Now talking about the multi-drug resistant TB. For multi-drug resistant TB, if in multi-drug resistant TB we see a rifampin resistance, okay, so there are two regimens, so MDR TB, let me just write the heading first, treatment of MDR TB. Okay, so for treatment of multi-drug resistant TB, we have two things. We have short regimen, okay, we have long regimen. Okay, starting with the short regimen first. Okay, for short regimen we have the regimen which says we should include two group A drugs. Okay, so two group A drugs are bedaquiline, okay, and we have levofloxacin. One group B drug, okay, so we have clofazimine, okay. Then we have group C drug, okay, which was ethambutol and ethionamide, okay. And we have one additional drug which say HH. So what is this HH? This HH basically stands for high doses of isoniazid, okay. So this is the regimen, okay, for the short regimen of MDR-TB, and this is the first part of the regimen, okay. Now the second part, will give a slash levofloxacin, clofazimine, Z and E. So we have two drugs from group A and two drugs from group C, okay. So the first part, it is the initiation phase, so it is for 4 to 6 months, and second part of the regimen is continuation phase for 5 months. So remember, we have 10 months ka regimen. Now for your better understanding and to remember this regimen, we will split it like this, okay. So what is the point of splitting this regimen like this? So two drugs from group A, one drug from group B, two drug from group C, and this is additional drug, okay, that we should remember. And for continuation phase, we have two drugs from group A and two drugs from group C. So remember it like this, surely you will remember. And the duration is, the initiation phase is 4 to 6 months, continuation phase is 5 months, okay. Now comes the longer regimen of MDR-TB, and this long regimen, just a second, longer regimen, this also covers XDR-TB is covered, okay. Now as we saw in the monoresistance TB and polydrug resistance TB, that there is no differentiation between initiation phase and continuation phase. So for longer regimen of XDR-TB and MDR-TB, there is also no differentiation between the initiation phase and continuation phase. So the regimens is for 18 to 20 months, okay, the duration. Now what is the regimen exactly? So it says that the three drugs from group A, bedaquiline, okay, levofloxacin, one drug from group B, two drug from group B, okay, three drug from group A, two drug from group B. So sorry, there's one mistake, okay, now it is fine. 3 drug from group A and 2 drug from group B. The reason I am by hearting this regimen as group A and group B, because it gives us a clear idea of visualizing the regimen and remembering it for a longer duration, okay. So for 18 to 20 months we give bedaquiline, levoflox, linezolid, okay, the group A drug, and 2 group B drugs, the CC, that was cycloserine and clofazimine. So this was all about the regimens. Treatment of, starting with the treatment of first time exposure, we have 6 HRZE plus 4 HRE. Then treatment of monoresistant TB, we have the continuation and the initiation phase not differentiated. So the regimen states that for 6 to 9 months you should take levoflox, one group A tablet, and REZ as usual, which we give in first time exposure, REZ. Okay, then treatment of PDR-TB, it also says that the initiation phase and continuation phase is not differentiated, and the regimen is same, 6 to 9 months, levoflox, REZ. Then we have treatment of multi-drug resistance TB, which states a shorter and a longer regimen. Okay, in the shorter regimen, we have the initiation phase for 4 to 6 months and the continuation phase for 5 months, in which the initiation phase contains 2 drugs from group A, which are the bedaquiline and levofloxacin, 1 drug from group B, which is clofazimine. We have 2 drugs from group C, which is ethionamide and ethambutol. We have 1 additional drug, which is high doses of isoniazid HH in the initiation phase. This completes the initiation phase. For the continuation phase, we have 2 drugs from group A and 2 drugs from group C. Okay, so levofloxacin and clofazimine from group A, and from group C we have Z and E as usual. And in the longer regimen, we also include the XDR-TB, and also this is not the differentiation between initiation phase and continuation phase is not there. So the duration is 18 to 20 months of drug therapy, in which we give 3 drugs of group A and 2 drugs of group B. Okay, so bedaquiline, linezolid and levoflox from group A, and clofazimine and cycloserine from group B. Okay, now the short regimen and the long regimen. Okay, focusing on these 2 regimens. So for short regimen, remember, for initiation phase, the formula is 2-1-2, 2 from group A, 1 from group B, 2 from group C, and further 2 from group A, 2 from group C. And for longer regimen, the formula state 3 from group A and 2 from group B. So this was all about the regimens. Now coming to the objectives, 1-line objectives of treatments of tuberculosis. So the first objective is make patient non-infectious as soon as possible. Okay. Second objective is to use drugs having synergistic action. Okay. Third objective is to prevent drug resistance. This is the need of the hour objective. Okay. Then to prevent relapse, and lastly to prevent mortality. Okay. Now 2 of the very last important, okay, TB in pregnancy. Okay, so if there is a TB in pregnancy, we can use the first line drugs HRZE, and lastly the chemoprophylaxis of TB. So chemoprophylaxis, so this is the therapy which is given to individual after, I'm writing this in red, remember, ruling out tuberculosis. Okay, so if there is no tuberculosis, why are we giving this therapy? So given in individuals residing in areas where TB is seen, HIV is seen. Okay, and the regimen is isoniazid plus rifampicin weekly for 3 months. Okay, or another regimen, isoniazid 5 milligram per kg per day for 6 months. Okay, so that's it for TB. Thank you.